Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Somnia Dreamathon. Today, we have Carlos joining us. He's a principal data scientist with Flipside AI. So he'll be going through some of the potential of like vibe coding, insomnia, and like Flipside. So if that's up your alley, this is a great person to kind of hear what's possible from. Carlos, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. So I'm Carlos Mercado, Charlie Marketplace on Twitter. Feel free to hit me up. I'm a principal data scientist at Flipside Crypto. We're a pretty small team, but we're pretty mighty. And then I'm going to go ahead and quickly show you something ugly about what I'm going to talk to you about today. We're going to walk you through, I'm only sharing one screen right now, but I'm going to walk you through what is Flipside AI. I'll give you a little bit of a glossary of the keywords. I'm going to remind you what Flipside AI can do. I'm going to also do something a little silly here and make it do some funny stuff. So I'm going to tell you what the chat, I'm going to tell you about agents, I'm going to tell you about artifacts, I'm going to tell you about workflows, we're going to walk through some example data, and we're also going to walk through some real world examples. And this is a little silly, I'm just doing it for you really quick. Rewrite that more aesthetic, please. Well, I think it will actually break this rule, so that's funny. Okay, all right, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to do. All right, so I'm going to quickly show you a few things. Before we start, what is Flipside AI? So if you've heard of Flipside before, you may remember the studio environment where you could do SQL analysis in our website. We've kind of deprecated that, mostly because we've seen how AI is moving. AI is moving really quickly. We were kind of in a box where we were developing so many AI agents internally with Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini, and we were trying out everything. We've been in AI for a few years on Hugging Face, making custom models with Llama 2, Llama 3. And we just realized that the future is not one analyst by themselves coding in like a website and doing analytics like that. The future is really having an AI sidecar assistant that can help you with all the hard questions you might have. I'm gonna go ahead and close my Slack also and close my Telegram and close all my notifications so that you're not distracted. And then I will also lightly, okay, sounds good. So I'm going to show you a few things. First, let's show you the Flipside AI website. So if you haven't been there before, you go to flipside.chat, flipside.chat. It's very fun. This will take you to, I'm going to actually do this it'll take you to this page. So if you're not logged in, you'll see like a black page with a big chat window. If you are logged in, it's free to make an account. You'll get this environment. If you've used AI before, like Claude, ChatGPT, it's pretty similar looking, right? You have chats on the left side, you have a big old text box in the middle, and you're talking to like some of the smartest artificial intelligence models out there in the world. We default to Claude, but we also have backups with ChatGPT and Google Gemini and things like that. Okay, so that's a chat. The next thing I want to walk you through is like what's kind of the output of this system. So I'm going to show you an artifact. So these are artifacts. The idea behind an artifact is you can have the AI build you an entire web page. So that's HTML, JavaScript, CSS. If you've used, again, studio environments before, you've made dashboards before, you've looked at, Flipside dashboard, Dune, Nansen, Token Terminal. Those are visualizations that someone built by hand. They chose all the color schemes, they chose the layouts, they chose the sizes, they chose everything and put it on that page. And what we found is nowadays with AI, like you really can have the AI do it and tell it what you like and don't like, and it will edit it accordingly. So let me pull up kind of a random one really quick. So this is about the balancer export that just happened. It does a bunch of fancy charts and stuff like that. It details what I think happened. It goes through traces, blah, 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 blah. So the main point there is an artifact is like the result. It's a report, it's a dashboard, it's a visual. It can be updated. And you'll notice I have a lot of them that look really similar. Because we have AI, I literally just tell the AI make 10 copies, do 10 attempts, and then I pick the one that I most like. Okay, so I told you what an artifact was. Let's see, other vocabulary words. Rules. I'm going to show you my rules really quick. Rules are a way that you can customize your AI experience. So I was talking to Austin. He mentioned that a lot of the people in the audience that are working with Somnia are in the seed-ish stage, maybe a little bit post-seed. So, maybe you do have some contracts deployed. I'm going to show you what some of the data about Somnia looks like. Maybe you are getting a little bit of TVL, which is great. We'll talk about how contracts can, receive deposits of tokens like USDC. and Rapsomi. You might not have a huge analytics team. You might have no analytics at all. One thing I want to really onboard you to is that this environment was designed for people who know the business, but they might not just know SQL, or they might not know high charts and like data visualization. We want this to be that sidecar assistant for you. So we currently have, a lot of people who tell us they've never coded in SQL, but they understand their business model, they understand their goals. They can walk through with Flipside AI and get key information, develop their KPIs, understand what's changing about their environment. And of course, we have default behaviors. If you show up to the chat, it will attempt to do everything for you. It will make a plan. It will pull queries. It will look at tables. It will make you an artifact. You might want a different default behavior, and that's what rules are for. Rules are a way that you can customize, hey, who am I? What's my expertise with the data? What's my goal with the business model? You might not want something. Hey, I don't want you to make visuals unless I ask you to. You might want it to speed up. So I have a bunch of different rules. Some of them, we'll share and make it more accessible to you. I like this rule a lot, chain of thought prompting. This one kind of details how you might want to engage with a system. And this is not just for Flipside AI, this is AI in general. So chain of thought prompting is about like really set up your question before you ask your question. That's the core idea. Okay, so I've talked to you about what the chat is. I've talked to you about what an artifact is. I've talked to you about rules. I'm going to quickly talk to you about workflows. So you're not going to see a workflow right now. Actually, that's not true. I'll show you one really quickly. So let's do a fresh chat and do an @ symbol. This is a new feature, so you won't have this feature for this week, but you'll have it next week if you make an account. We cover a lot of data about a lot of chains, including Somnia. We also have this idea of workflows. So we, like I said before, our team is pretty small, but we've been doing AI internally for so long that we found that there's like common questions across different environments. So stablecoin transfer volume, new accounts, contracts going viral, high quality usage. And what we found was we needed a place for our data science team and data science teams at other places to put their expertise about a problem somewhere and have that expertise accessible within the AI module. So you can imagine workflows are a way that we can make the AI smarter for very specific problems. So again, I'm not going to show you a ton of workflows right now, but it's like the last vocabulary word. So again, we talked about chat, we talked about artifacts, that's the output. We talked about rules, personalized AI, we talked about workflows, where expertise can be added to the system so that other chats in the future are just getting better and better and better and better. This is still in beta, and it's like super awesome. I use it every single day. It's going to keep getting better. When AI gets smarter and new models come out, when ChatGPT 6 comes out, when there's tons of workflows, thousands of them for all kinds of different problems, the system's going to get really smart. Okay, so next thing on my to-do list, what can Flipside AI do? So I'm going to show you this chat really quick. So not this one. Let's see, what's the rules? I'm going to show you this one at the end. Let's see. All right, let me pull up the chain discovery one really quick. So this one's fun. This is using a workflow. So I told you I wouldn't show you one, but I actually will at the end. This one does chain discovery. And all this does, if you want later after this, I'll send a link out to Austin. He can share it. We have a pretty cool thing where you can actually have a URL that does your first prompt for you. So I'll send this out so that everyone can kind of click a single button and they'll get a really clean output of what is available for Somnia. So yeah, you're seeing a lot of stuff here. It can write its own SQL. It can query that SQL. It can look at the results. It can kind of come up with a follow-up question. It can check things. Hey, this isn't here. There's no Somnia data in this table. That's okay. Keep going. It is very eager. The way I try to think about this is it's like a really fast army of junior data scientists. The more you know about the problem, the better you can direct the AI. The AI will make mistakes, but it wants to be correct. So it will be eager to correct the mistakes. You can try to zero shot the AI, which is just, hey, here's a big prompt, go. But, like I've managed junior analysts before. Like I do sometimes zero shot them. Hey, here's a big block of information, go explore this. I don't expect they're going to come back with a perfect answer. Typically, it's better when it's multiplying your effort. So, if you're giving it 1 minute of effort, maybe it's equivalent to like 5 minutes of my time. But if you're going to sit there for 15, 20 minutes and really explore a problem, develop KPIs, ask it questions, ask it to verify against the web, that's when it's going to be worth hours of a data scientist's time. And that's when you're really going to be unlocking, that thousands of dollars per hour in value, which for CEOs of seed stage companies, you really want that. You really want to be able to generate thousands of dollars in value for yourself and multiply your effort. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to pause really quick and just kind of lightly scan this slowly. So Flipside, our specialty is curating data, especially EVM data. So Somnia being a high throughput EVM chain with a variety of focuses in both DeFi and gaming, we're covering a lot. So we are pretty comprehensive. We already have 4 billion rows of data across like 15 different tables. So we're recording every transaction. What happens in the transaction? Who set the transaction? How much gas did they pay? Things like that. We're tracking all the event logs. So if a contract emits an event, we're tracking that. And this is the thing that I'll make sure, since some of y'all are developers, if the contract correctly deploys their ABI, that means application binary interface, that means the instructions of the contract, then we can decode the contract. So this is very fundamental. I'm going to go ahead and flip over to a scanner. So if you are seed stage hacker, you have a small group and you're hiring devs, or maybe you're a dev yourself, make sure you understand contract deployment and how the chain, you're deploying bytecode. It's just a bunch of numbers. Humans can't read that. You have to tell someone, typically you tell the scanner, the number one scanner for the chain, you tell the scanner, hey, this is what the contract code does, and they will verify that the contract code you provided matches the bytecode. And then, so this is the contract. You can see here, it is verified, at least partially. So the code is available. This is really important because this contract, because the developer deployed it correctly and they sent the information to the scanner, we can see everything this contract does. So I'm actually going to take a quick step back and we're going to flip over to another chat where I dive a little bit deeper into what's going on. And we're going to find this contract. We're actually going to find a problem with this contract. Not a problem in the contract, but a problem with our understanding of the contract, my understanding. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. So this is just saying once we decode stuff, we can do things like token transfers. When contracts are deployed, notice there's a lot of contracts. There's not a lot of ABIs. It's really common. A lot of devs, a lot of small teams, new teams, they're deploying stuff, and little mistakes can really impact their adoption. It can really impact their ability to get understood. So make sure that if you only have one takeaway from this as a developer or a founder, make sure you are deploying your stuff with the instructions. And then, of course, labels. Labels are very popular, central exchanges, centralized exchanges. And we have a bunch of price data and all this other stuff. And we're expanding it all the time. Okay, so I'm going to close this chat. Again, I will send you a link to this input. So you're going to click the button, and you're going to see this exact text. And it'll start your chat, and it'll detail everything for you. So I'm going to close this out. Okay, so this is a chat. I'm going to go up to the very top. So I will show you some real-world examples. I just did the first demo, which was what data is available for Somnia. We track everything, all the transactions, all the logs, all the traces. When a contract is deployed correctly and we have the instructions, we will decode it. Once it's decoded, we can do all the fancy stuff. Token transfers, soon like decentralized exchange swaps, liquidity pool adds, stuff that will matter to you, which I will show you in the live demo section. So this next section is kind of really when crypto is very adversarial. You might have heard of the article called Dark Forest, Ethereum's a Dark Forest. The idea behind that is because crypto is so permissionless, you just see things like people spoofing contracts. So if you go right now to Ethereum and you go to USDC, hey, I want to know about USDC. Symbol is not safe. You will see hundreds of spam and scams claim to be USDC, and they will even do things like hack their event logs to look like a major person transferred their fake token. There's a very common hack that's done. Symbol's not safe. And that's an example of how this crypto space is very adversarial. So for us, we're constantly doing things to make it easier to identify what's legit and filter out the scams So I'm showing you this because this is just me organically exploring Somnia. So the first thing I was curious about is DeFi labels. Hey, I want to know about DEX pools because for every project launches a token, they're going to need DEX liquidity. So I want to know about available DEX pools and DEX data. So, I said, hey, what labels are available for DeFi? I knew that this is called label type. I knew the column name. If you know more and you give it more, it will do better. But even if you didn't do that, you just said what labels are available, it would do a lot. So it plans, it finds table names, it gets schemas, it writes queries, it runs queries. Again, if you know what you're doing, this would be the same speed as me doing it in terms of writing it directly. But if you don't necessarily know table names and stuff like that, this is where Flipside AI really shines. Its ability to take a small input and expand it and do these steps for you. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on here. Pool data provider, treasury collector. There's a lot of addresses. There's a pool, incentives management. This is across the entire ecosystem. It seems to be Tokos related, which my understanding is that's lending market related. There's also Taro Finance. So that's cool. We'll look into Tokos a little bit later, I think, if we have time. Okay, so I asked it to explain stuff, and it did a good job. It found Tokos, found Taro Finance. It details stuff like price feed contracts. One of them is probably an Aave fork, so it has the same contract names, Aave Oracle. Lending infrastructure stuff, that's great. So before, like I mentioned, with tokens and scams and stuff, I try to always remember, okay, I got to find which of these contract addresses is legit. What is the correct contract address? Because if you blindly go, tell me about USDC transfers, you're going to get the real USDC, you're going to get bridged USDC, you're going to get scam USDC. And very quickly, your data will say trillions of dollars moved. That doesn't make sense. Most of that might be scams. You have to get the correct address. So, I'm just asking it hey, tell me about the SOMI token and stuff like that. It's doing its thing. It's looking for the contracts that say SOMI in it. It's a good attempt. Like I mentioned, the symbols are not safe. There's a bunch of nonsense in here. Meme coins and stuff like that. That's not that crazy. That's common. You're going to see meme coins in the data. So it looks online and it looks for the official address. So this is really powerful. I often say, hey, search the web. The more you're using this thing as an assistant, the better it's going to be. So it says the official SOMI contract is this, and it's going to look for the token transfers. So that's what I asked it to do. And it says no results. Now, a lot of people in this spot would say, okay, that doesn't mean it's really wrong. AI made a really big mistake. Maybe the data is wrong, something like that. I was worried that there was something wrong too. So I took the address and I checked the scanner. This is the contract that I showed you before. And you'll notice right here, token transfer is 0. So again, the assistant is actually really powerful because I would have never gotten to this page and found this contract and noticed the situation. Now, I'm not going to detail too much what the situation is. The main thing is this is a gateway for layer 0 tokens. It's their Omni system, which is how it's able to move across different chains and stuff like that. So the real token you want is wrapped SOMI. You don't want the layer 0 one that has no transfers. You want to get the wrapped version. So it was smart enough to notice this is a problem, check the data again, look for the most common tokens, and it found by itself a lot of really useful information. It found the wrapped token contract. It found bridged USDC. It found some of these other arenas, which I believe was a lending market also. It found their version of these tokens, and it found a bunch of common meme coins and other stuff like that. So, yeah, all by itself, it realized that the path I was going down was problematic, and it found the correct address. So let me take a little bit of a step back because I think I'm getting a little bit in the weeds of the data. Let's talk about how might you use all this. So it was able to tell me the correct contract, wrap SOMI. I also, because it mentioned the stable coins, I didn't know about arenas, so I asked it to search arenas, and it didn't do. It's hard. It didn't really find much about arenas. I'll have to search that more later. I tried to make an artifact. I told it not to. So anyway, scrolling down a bit, I was just curious about contracts, labeling. I was just exploring random stuff. I'll share this chat later. Let's go on to the real world example. So we kind of found a few legit tokens. We found Rapsomi, we found USDC, and then we're soon, I'm going to ask it to do some stuff to find USDT, so other legit tokens. So what I'm very curious about is the net transfers of stablecoins to addresses. So again, for every project, right, you're going to need liquidity. And the best ways to get liquidity are typically major tokens. You know, can you bring Bitcoin to Somnia? Can you bring ETH to Somnia? Those have liquidity on other chains. So if you can bring those tokens to your chain, you're bringing liquidity. Stable coins, again, that's like the easiest way. That's like the best liquidity kind of, because it enables people to off ramp risk, but stay on the chain. So more stable coins is like really good econometrically for chains. And it's really good for projects to have liquidity either in major tokens or stable coins or both. If you ever use DeFi Llama, you can go to DeFi Llama's like TVL stats, and it actually has a drop down button to like exclude like governance tokens and tokens that are like in the treasury, because otherwise projects look super rich. Oh, this project has $1 billion in its treasury. Okay, 99% of that is its own token, and the token has like only a few 100,000 in liquidity. So that's not real. The billion is not real because the liquidity is very limited. So you always want to be thinking about like the real legit stuff, typically stablecoins, major tokens, and of course the chain's native asset. So for Somnia, Rapsomi is going to probably be the most liquid, non-major, non-stablecoin token. So similarly, the gas token of chains can be very valuable. So it started doing something. I noticed it was like doing a full history. Somnia is very big. I said do the last 30 days. Okay. So it's found a lot of tokens that claim to be dollar-based. I wanted to like check. So I was like, okay, check the price data. A stable coin should be probably between 99 cents and $1.01. That's like a typical, that sounds good for a stable coin. And it did a great job. It checked all the tokens we have for prices for Somnia. It filtered, it rounded, it did all this stuff. And it found like the two main ones. The two main ones are USDT and USDC.E. So that's great. So what have we done so far? Really, so far, all I've shown you is that it can search the web and it can write queries. But also, it did a really useful thing. It told me like the 3 important contract addresses that I'm going to need for all kinds of feature analysis. If I want to analyze value flows to new contracts or value flows into lending markets and out of lending markets, I'm going to need the Rapsomi contract and I'm going to need the stablecoin contracts. So this is doing a lot of setup for me, and that's very powerful. The more you can set yourself up for success, the more you'll be able to do later. You know, now with this, I can look at really advanced stuff. And I actually might do that. So let's see. Yeah, this is what I did. I forgot I did the step already. So this step is just, hey, I want to know which contracts in the last 30 days are getting the most USDC and USDT. My expectation is, you know, hey, we should be able to find DEX pools. We should be able to find lending markets. Maybe we can use this to find up and coming contracts. So yeah, so a lot of addresses here receiving only USDC, very little USDT. It's not unusual. Maybe these are like the liquidity pools and it's not against USDT. It's worth checking. So let's see if it found the labels for some of these. Okay, it found some of the main ones. Somnex, swap router. These are like the main 2 labeled ones. This is the burn address, so that makes sense. Sometimes they're minted and burned. Okay. Term aggregator swap router. Very interesting. It's doing a lot of stuff. Okay, lots of liquidity. DEX swaps. Okay. The Somnex term aggregator. We found one thing labeled. That's good. So again, labels, if you're launching a new project, same idea, right? If you're deploying your contracts to the chain, make sure you're also telling scanners so they have your code, and you can also say what you are. If you say what you are when you deploy your code, it's not just Flipside AI that gets better. The entire ecosystem that's analyzing Somnia is looking at this scanner for your information. You know, if people want to review how your code works, that's funny, pre-crime simulator. I've never seen this before. I saw a joke about it with the balancer hack, but I didn't think this was a real name. That's funny. Okay. Anyway, let's go back to what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to give you a real world example. Let's see. A real world example is the net transfers of stablecoins to addresses. So let's do that. Okay. With the USDC and USDC contracts you found, I want to know the contract with the most net inflows in last 30 days. So you can say just this, but I'm going to give it a lot more detail just because I kind of know exactly how I want it to work. So it's okay if you don't know exactly how you will write this. So kind of what I'm expecting it to do is like, imagining like first get like, transfers to contracts, transfers out of contract. So this is like plus, this is minus, combine and net, order and give me top. So I'm kind of telling it the plan that I want. I want to, okay, first get all the transfers to the contracts, then get them out, then combine them, then net them, then order them. So let's give it a second and see what it's doing. I am talking a lot. I was hoping, Austin, if you're on, any feedback questions while this is running? He might not have expected me to ask him a question.
No, sorry. I was on the other side of my computer getting water. It doesn't look like we have any questions yet, but people are definitely enjoying it. We got amazing stuff here. Absolutely impressed. And Emily gave you a shout out of learning from Carlos is my favorite pastime. So,
oh, thank you.
You're definitely being heard.
That's good. Thank you. Okay, let's see. It's doing a lot of stuff. Okay, so this is 2 addresses. This is the from addresses. It's combining. It's ranking. I'm noticing it's making a small mistake. It's not filtering to contracts. That's okay. Maybe it'll try to do it at the end. I probably wouldn't do it at the end. I probably would try to do it up front. But that's okay. Yeah, so none of these are labeled. So yeah, the burn address they got right. But I think. Oh, okay. Lightning protocol. That makes sense. So it looks like there's been in the last 30 days, there's been a net like 240,000 of stablecoin deposits to this Arena's lending protocol. That's cool. Yeah, I think this is one of those things where like the amounts are so small that you're probably getting non-contracts. I'm going to go ahead and tell it that. I expected a filter of VM contracts. These may be EOAs. If you don't know what EOA is, it means like an account that has a private key. So again, Somnia is an EVM. We do a lot of EVM analytics. If you are building on EVMs, it will help to know more vocabulary like that. Okay, so like I said, right, it's eager to correct itself. And then I might kind of slow down on this, and we might look at some visuals and see if it can do some visualization for us. So actually, I do this a lot, so I should just do it now too. Let's just start a second chat. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the 2 contracts that we know about. Okay, over the last 90 days, actually just 12 weeks, by week, I want to know transfer volume by transfer size. So under $10, under $100, under $1,000, under $10,000, under $100,000, 100K plus with what are these tokens? let's see how that goes on the side. So what you might see, and this is not uncommon with like a developing ecosystem that's kind of new, it can be very hard to hit the critical mass that you need for large transactions to be viable. So even if someone did have hundreds of thousands of dollars of USDC, right? Can they sell in that size? Maybe. It has to depend on how much liquidity there is in the in the DEX market. Can they? Often, what you'll see is they will engage in lending markets in size because lending markets don't have price impact and slippage. So you'll often see large whale stuff in lending markets, but not in DEX markets. And one of the things we do at Flipside is kind of study the liquidation risks. So we're looking at, hey, if everyone who's in size is in the lending markets and they're borrowing lots of tokens, can those loans be liquidated on chain or do they have to be liquidated off chain? So we study all that stuff, and we differentiate based on mature ecosystems and like growing ecosystems and stuff like that. So if you're at Somnia and you want to know more about that, ping Emily. She'll organize our analytics on that. And if you're a new project, this chat will help you with kind of seeing, hey, are there any whales using my protocols? Because I would love to know all my whales and do things like keep track of them. That's a very common use case we have. We actually have like a whole agents infrastructure. I think this is live, but we do targeting agents, things like that, competitive intel. This stuff's like really fancy. Our team's building it. I don't know too much about this stuff, but a very common use case that we're building out is targeting. So again, if you're early stage project on Somnia and you're trying to get whales that have used things on other ecosystems, it's EVM, right? So the Somnia address, maybe it's never done anything on Somnia, but super active on Ethereum mainnet. Targeting can help you find those accounts. And then there's third-party services like Spindle, recently bought by Coinbase, that does crypto native like advertising and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely just keep an eye out for like you run these businesses, so you know what you're targeting and things like that. Okay, so it did a bunch of filtering. AM liquidity, random token. Yeah, looks like there's been some tokens. Router, yeah, it's expected router stuff. The most common is this one. So yeah, I mean, econometrically speaking, I definitely would be keeping an eye on this. Anytime lending markets are getting way more activity than your DEX markets, that's just something you want to be aware of, especially for new projects that are launching their own tokens. They love to try to get listed in lending markets. Lending markets can be very strict about, alt tokens. DEXs are the exact opposite. Anyone can put tokens in a DEX. So the more DEX liquidity you have, the better. And also the easier it will be to get listed in a lending market if you have the DEX liquidity. So I'm going to stop this chat. I think you saw enough about the contract stuff. I really want to look at this kind of whale sizing thing. I think we're almost, yeah. So this is kind of like the last bit of what I wanted to prep. I don't know how much time we have left, but this next one is interactions with whales. So let's look at this last 12 weeks. I want to know transfer sizing. It's doing a good job. It's categorizing. It's doing it by amount USD. That's fine. These stable coins have a price. Look at it. It's doing some stuff at the weekly level. It's doing a bunch of analytics. Let's go ahead and look at this analytics page really quick. And I'm going to publish it just so that I can view it in full size. Yeah, retail dominance. Let's see. So this is not unusual. USDC.E means it's bridged. So a lot of newer, chain environments, it takes time to get an issuer like Tether or Circle to issue a native of their stablecoin on your chain. So it's very common to work with, a bridge partner like Layer 0 or similar, or Wormhole, to kind of get a large amount of stablecoins from one environment to your environment. Some issuers don't like that because it's an IOU to an IOU, but that's actually a strategy. So for a lot of these up and coming environments, the more of these bridge stablecoins you can get and use in your ecosystem, the more important it will be to the issuer to give you a native version. So we've seen that in a lot of different ecosystems. They focus on Layer 0, eventually they hit maturity, and then really there's a huge conversion back to the original native version. Let's see. I mean, it's doing a good job. It's telling me the total volume. It's telling me there's not any whale stuff. It's telling me, okay, this chart looks a little off, but this chart's looking right. So don't love to see that. We'll double check that on the background, on the back end. It's telling me very, very few whales. Let's see what happens if I start unchecking things. So again, this is like a first pass of, okay, so this is telling me 1.2 million in whale transfers. Yeah, so hate to see that, weird errors like that in a chart, but it's like I said, eager, right? An eager data scientist, junior level, they're just trying to do a lot at once. And in this case, luckily, we could double check it because it included the weekly level breakdown. So what probably happened is there was a lot of weeks with none, and the chart got messed up. We'll work on that. Still in beta. So looking at this, I do see the occasional whale. It's been a while. September. Yeah, a lot of September stuff. So my immediate read is probably that lending market launched, and there was a few whales interested in seeking liquidity for the lending market, so they moved to their large size then, and they just haven't really been doing much since then for these tokens. Again, not unusual. It's really cool to get this analysis as instantly as I did. Junior data scientist, like I mentioned, occasional mistakes. But yeah, a lot of information here. So the cool thing is, with the system, you can say things like, hey, this, double check this. You said 0 volume here. I think what happened is that this is in millions and it's rounding down. So that could be the issue. But we did see hundreds of thousands, so you would expect some decimal. Okay, so let's see. Interactions by whales. Okay, let's do this. Tell me about contracts deployed in the last 14 days. So some of our partners are really interested in their like emerging protocols. So what they'll do is they'll pretty regularly say like, hey, are there contracts that were on testnet that are now deployed on mainnet? With EVM, you can have deterministic addresses, so hey, this testnet address that was deployed by this person. If we see that person deploy a contract and it's the same address at the end, then it's the same code, right? It's all matched. So their progression from testnet to mainnet is something that a lot of our partners look at. Similarly, they're looking at like, hey, what contracts are kind of going viral? Are there protocols that are really hitting the head on marketing, and a push would really help them? Developing your flagships is very important for ecosystems. I don't know much about how Somnia is doing that, but my understanding is there's a lot of projects here that are in that early seed and post-seed phase. So you definitely want to be monitoring your contracts and seeing if some of them are going viral, how many users you're getting, are any users whales. And then one thing I haven't mentioned that we're still working on is our scores. So if you haven't heard this before, Flipside scores every single private key owning account. So I mentioned EOA earlier, externally owned account. If your account is a private key, we are monitoring everything you do. Sorry, Chain's public. And we're categorizing your activity across 15 different metrics in 5 sectors. So governance activity, NFT activity, general like frequency of transactions, DeFi transactions, arbitrage and like central exchange bridge flows, that kind of stuff. And which is within each of those categories, there's multiple metrics. And one of the things we notice is that chains can have a lot of addresses, but that does not mean. Okay, so the common factory contract is probably related to NFT deployment or something silly like that. Has a lot of leading zeros. The reason you would want a lot of leading zeros is it reduces your transaction cost when interacting with it. Kind of a silly gas optimization thing. It could also be a little cooked, like the network can set an address to have this value. On op mainnet, the ETH token is like all zeros except like a 2 0 at the end or something. I'll look at that in a second. So back to what I was saying about viral contract stuff. Yeah, you want to know if you're being analyzed. And Flipside scores, we're scoring every address. And what we found is on most chains, even if they have a large number of active addresses, when you score those addresses, you find a lot of addresses. I mean, 60% on some chains are one and done. So the address, the vast majority of the time, all it does is receive the native token and send the native token, like peer-to-peer payments kind of stuff for most chains, the vast majority of raw activity, transaction counts, user counts, is that basic stuff. Getting the native token, maybe the wrap token, and moving it to another address. The funnel of touching the chain and then touching contracts, like touching DeFi contracts, it's very, very thin. I mean, most people do the basic stuff. A few people do advanced stuff like swapping, and you get more advanced than swapping. I mean, like if you're a liquid staking token project, or if you're a lending market, or if you're trying to do like more interesting stuff around like collateralized stablecoins, right? The funnel of people who are willing to do those complicated things gets very small very quickly. And with Flipside scores, we can kind of pre-score addresses across different EVM environments that enable you to target. And that targeting is very powerful because now, say you're doing a token generation event, or you want to plan like an acquisition campaign for your project, you might want to look at projects in other ecosystems and look at their top users, or look at users that have high scores across different EVMs for Flipside scores. And what we found is if you have 4 points, that's like a huge cutoff. Things like market cap, engagement, growth, viral contracts, viral protocols, those are not correlated with number of transactions and number of users on a chain. They're not. Number of raw users and number of raw transactions is not correlated with anything good. But our filter, quality addresses, so people who manage to get 4 points in a category or across categories, that does correlate. When you have more engaged users who show up regularly, our quality users are less than 5% of a chain's active user base, but they're responsible for 25 to 50% of DEX swaps every day. They're responsible for 30% of transactions every day. They're responsible for like 40 to 60% of overall token transfer volume to contracts and from contracts every day. So filtering to the most engaged users is super critical. Okay. So it's telling me a lot of stuff. Again, junior data scientist, right? It's very eager. It tends to jump to like interpretations that I probably wouldn't immediately make. For me, I'm much more interested in the facts. So let's see what it did. And I'll publish this so that I can view it full screen. Same as before. So let's look at this. So over the last 14 days, a lot of contracts deployed. Tend to be deployed in peaks. So there was a bunch on the 25th, a bunch on the 1st. Token contracts versus non-token contracts. I'll have to look at how I define that, because I would define a token contract. This is where like a workflow would be useful, right? Like how would a data scientist define a token contract versus a non-token contract? For me, I would look at it based on if there's a decimal or not. They chose to look at if there's a symbol or not. That's probably okay. To do. Yeah, so I'm curious about these non-token contracts, but we're going to look at that separately. Top deployers deployed most contracts. That tends to be factory contracts. So, if you've ever heard of Uniswap v2, there's a factory that all the liquidity pools from that are deployed by the factory contract. And that's like, there's lots of ways you can identify a factory contract. Okay, back to what we're looking at. So, yeah, I mean, this is kind of interesting. It's telling me that there's been a lot of deployments from certain creators. It's not quite telling me much about the value flows. So I'm going to ask that question, and I think we're going to pause and go towards kind of the questions with Austin in a second. So let me just ask this. Okay, among contracts deployed in the last 14 days, which received the most Somnia growth? Growth and net. So again, I'm going to kind of end, I'm going to let this cook, and then I'm going to end the spiel with a little bit of why AI again and why Flipside AI. I don't envision this replacing analysts. People who know the code and know the data are always going to be valuable, but those people tend to get very bottlenecked. Every time we talk to, one of our clients, they'll have a data team, but the ability for the business teams, institutional partnerships, growth, marketing, to lean on that data team, they can lean on them, but the speed is not always there. And if you've ever worked in, DevOps or like in Web 2 kind of world, there's a concept called the wall of confusion. And the idea there is that, you have the people who are building something and the people who are operating the business. And sometimes it's difficult to do the information pass. So if I'm running a protocol and I say, hey, data science, I really need to understand our retention better. If that's the only sentence I say, I need to understand our retention better. That data scientist might spend multiple days building a huge dashboard with all these pipelines that are measuring retention across all these different categories. And really, if this is kind of where I like Flipside AI being in the middle and being that middleware layer, if I instead went to Flipside AI and said, hey, I want to understand my retention better, it would look at workflows that other people have pulled about retention. It would generate an artifact that would attempt to talk about retention. It would write queries to try to understand retention. Now it might make mistakes, but I can ask it questions. It can ask me questions. You even might have noticed this, that when you do stuff, it'll have like buttons you can click, which say, hey, you want to follow up with this or that? Let me see if I can find one here. Hopefully I don't have it turned off. I might have it turned off for me. Oh, it's just not done. It's just like still going. Okay, so once it's done, it'll do something called suggestions, and you'll see like some boxes with like follow-up questions. When a business person, CEO, COO, chief marketer, chief growth officer, whatever, is engaging with the system and being asked questions, and they can answer those questions, this chat becomes a really clean scope document. And that is an amazing baton pass to a data science team, because now, yeah, you're still talking about retention or something, but you've fleshed out all these ideas and like conceptions you have about retention, how you define it. Retention can be who was here last month that's still here this month, or it can be who's ever used us twice. There's so many different ways you could define it. And having that business person engage with the system and build documents, even if the queries are not perfect, or even if the visuals are not perfect, like you just saw before, that is something that you can pass to a data science team. They can review it, and now they're hitting the ground running. I mean, like something that we've noticed internally is our growth teams will actually use this, do analytics, scope stuff out, and they'll send us the chat, artifacts, questions, things that are worried about. And what would take me 2-ish days to like really deep dive, it's like an hour. Like in an hour, I can read everything they did, check all the SQL, find the problems, check the artifact. This error was made. Okay, this is the root of what you want. I'm gonna start a fresh chat. I'm gonna take this from your chat. I'm gonna restart. And like within an hour, days of work in hours is like an insane benefit. And here's the suggestion. So list top 5, display the sources, like this kind of stuff for a non-coder to be able to do, super powerful. So let's see. Again, I'm going to publish this so I can see it in full view. I need to stop publishing all my artifacts because then I forget to unpublish them and delete them. Oh, is this the whale one? Oops, sorry. Let me click the actual one there. Deployed October. Okay. This is the one I want. Copy public link. Oh, this is so much going on. Okay, I think I just want the table. Yeah, we're launching a new version of Artifacts 2, which will be editable, and you can unclick stuff and all that stuff. I'm a little confused. Okay, here we go. This is what I was wanting. Okay, this is the answer. So here's the gross flows. This liquidity token, this is probably for like a specific pool that's not named. Sometimes DEXs will have very, very specific names for each token, but this one doesn't do that. We're seeing some tokens with some inflows. We're seeing some meme coin stuff. We're seeing some unidentified stuff. We'll have to figure that out. Again, if you're launching contracts, please label them on your exchanges. Yeah, so I'm going to kind of softly wrap up, lightly grab this contract and just see if it's on the scanner. If you've never worked with the scanner, okay. So again, this contract is a Somnia v3 pool, probably Uniswap v3. Okay, so that's interesting. So it's a wrapped SOMI, staked SOMI liquidity pool, concentrated liquidity. Obviously, it doesn't initiate transactions, but it has a lot of transfers. So this is something that we're going to take back and say, hey, this contract gets a lot of activity. Maybe they didn't label themselves in the scanner when they deployed, but they're labeled now. So we're going to figure out how we can look into this a little bit more, and we'll curate it. Yeah, just looking at it, it looks like a Uniswap v3 fork a little bit, with some swaps, like code swaps. All right, that's helpful. So there are liquidity pools that are getting gross inflows. It looks like liquid staked Somi and Wrap Somi is a popular pool. Makes sense. Liquid stake liquidity is very popular. Yeah, let me stop there. I think that's everything we wanted to do. Austin, any questions?
Hey, yeah, we haven't had any questions flow through, but something I think is probably one of the biggest takeaways here, honestly, is what you were saying a few minutes ago about how you actually turn this into a deliverable that is useful. Like you can play around all day, but like the actual value comes from, yeah, turning that into a scope document, things like that. I know from like speaking with the teams and stuff like that, that's something that would definitely be appreciated if you could even go into a little bit more. Do you have any more examples, something along there? Just taking that kind of tooling and making it something quality.
Yeah, I can show you some stuff. So one thing that's a little bit more advanced, but everything you saw on Flipside AI is not living in our website. It's actually something called MCP, Model Context Protocol. So we have an MCP server that enables AIs, ChatGPT, Claude, etc., to call tools that we've developed. So everything you've seen here are very specific tool calls. This is Claude. It's Claude asking for this. This is the input. This is the output. Similar to an API, but it's an API for an LLM. We have things like a variety of templates, cursor templates. If you have, this is a common example. Hey, I have a project website. We want to launch an analytics page for our website. I don't even know what it should look like. I don't know what data should be there, what data is available for us. You can do Flipside AI. You can get a bunch of SQL, a bunch of chats, a bunch of visuals, do a full scope document. You can pass that to the team. And that's when the team, like, they're devs. They're not going to, they can use Flipside AI, but they're going to do something professional. So they can use our cursor templates, take out, if you haven't heard of Cursor, it's an AI native, like, development environment. You can literally pull the same exact stuff you saw on Flipside AI. Your devs can take everything you did. They can bring it over to their environment. And they can do things like, okay, hey, I want this as a pipeline. Hey, this, I want to make a visualization card. Hey, this, I want to run this every hour on the hour and pull the latest data. I'm going to make my website. I'm going to make all the servers. And you, like, it's like almost difficult to like brag too much about this. Like, we have our internal teams do this where they'll say stuff like, I mean, I think Emily's on the chat somewhere, but she'll do stuff like,
Yes, I see it down
hey,
there.
I want to like, I did a bunch of stuff in the chat. Here's all my documents. Here you go. And I can take that and professionalize it and make applications and do hard things. So, I mean, I don't know if I should be sharing this too broadly, but, hard stuff like, hey, I want to know viral contracts over the last 30 days. I want to know country deployments of different environments, and I want to have this available on a website. Like, all this was built with AI. It's not the prettiest thing. Sorry, it's built by a data scientist. I'm not a front end engineer, but all this stuff is built in the same stack. The AI is helping me write queries. The AI is answering my questions. The AI is helping me define what is a contract deployment of this environment. The AI is building the UI. The AI is writing the code that makes all this stuff interactive. So the smoothness is like crazy. And we have we're going to keep coming out with more content and videos and templates and examples of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, you literally, I think Emily's done this to me like 20 times. You share the link and you publish the artifact and you send it over to your team and say, hey, I built this, review it, ask me questions. And I mean, days of work in hours, weeks of work in a few days. It's like the speed up is insane. And I know we're cutting close to time, but like one of the funny things about this is it's actually, I don't know if you've seen that graph of like the S&P 500 going up and then like job openings for juniors going down or like things stagnant. And the split happened when ChatGPT launched. There's kind of a weird economics thing where like when people become more productive, the opportunity cost of them doing something else. So if like a developer is using AI and they're super productive, 1 hour of teaching a junior something costs so much more now, because that
Mhm.
1 hour they could be spending with AI building something super productive. So we're seeing this like thing where like, oh, the people who are senior know what they're doing and they have AI, they can do all this stuff. And it's actually like one of the problems that people are having with like breaking into fields is that like, well, how do I become AI native? How do I become like AI proficient and like get senior faster, essentially, so that I can get jobs and like do this stuff and like make my project successful and hire faster and stuff. Uh, I'm hoping AI catches up in teaching people how to use AI. But in the meantime, check out our YouTube and our GitHubs and this video. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Carlos, and kind of running through all of that. That's a really good starting point for, I think, just about everybody. I guess before we go offline, is there any particular like destination that somebody should go, just to kind of reiterate, like how should people check it out?
They should go to Flipside AI and ask it about itself. I think people, I think it's
I
kind of
love
weird.
that.
There's an idea called meta questions. It's like questions about questions, right? Or like metacognition, thinking about thinking. The AI can help you think about how to think about this weird thing that you're talking to. I mean, you're talking to the smartest AI on the market, well, like the third smartest AI on the market for cost reasons. And it has access to trillions of rows, like dozens of petabytes. It has like billions of transactions for Somnia specifically, and like you don't know what you don't know, but you can tell it what you don't know or want to know, and just go slow and steady. I mean, it can feel silly because sometimes when it comes to like digital stuff, you're like, oh, it should be instant. Like I should get my answer instantly. If I Google search, I get an answer instantly. But then people have way more patience for other people. Like people have more patience for junior data scientists than they have for Flipside AI, which is a little funny because like really, if you had the same amount of patience for both, you would have way more output with this. So yeah,
Mhm.
just slow and steady. Try it out. Ask it questions. We have a Telegram group. We'll share that for any analyst. If you're looking for a review, getting your project contract sorted out, definitely let me know. Happy to look. Um, it's very easy to add your ABIs and stuff. But yeah, I think just try it out. Try it out. It's the easiest way to do it.
All right, perfect. Well, with that, we'll probably end it here. Thank you, everybody, for coming out and watching. Thank you so much for thank you so much, Carlos. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next stream.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Bye.